my best friend was staying over my house that night, and that earlier that day we had actually attended a birthday party for my friend Yvette, who had turned 16 that day or that weekend. And it was, I mean, we're 16. This is a cake and ice cream party. We're not talking about, booze or anything like that. But I was always interested in monsters and ghost stories and things like that. I grew up with that kind of thing, but I didn't really know whether I believed in any of it, and I'd certainly never experienced anything. But that evening, a couple hours later, I would say 9:30 or 10 p.m., we were sitting in my room. My parents had rented, or my mom and my stepdad had rented a really, really nice Victorian house, second floor Victorian house in Newport, and it was great. It came with its own furniture. It was a little bit of a spooky house. It certainly was the right atmosphere for it, and I was very fortunate to have gotten the big bedroom, because the big bedroom had the two small beds in it. My parents had taken the smaller bedroom because it had the big double bed, so the two of us were sitting on our beds talking about whatever the heck it is that 16-year-olds talk about. That's too far back, I don't know. We were talking about it, and the lights were out, but the street light from the window was shining into the room, and through sort of a gap in the curtains. It had that kind of weird greenish light, but I noticed that it looked like the fog from a dryer vent was kind of a column showing up in the light of the street light. And I didn't know what it was at first. I mean, it honestly looked like a radiator was leaking or something like that. And it was just slow moving and maybe approximately the height of a person, and it was just barely drifting through the light of the window. I did not think, oh my God, a ghost. I thought, I don't know what this is, because it's kind of weird. And Russell and I started chatting back and forth about it, and we went through the whole, do you see that? Yeah, do you see that? And at some point, maybe being stupid or maybe being brave, I just decided that it had been there too long to be dust or a wisp of fog. It was slow and it was staying there. So I got up off my bed into between the two single beds, and I slowly walked forward. I wasn't exactly scared. I was a little nervous, but it didn't look dangerous, and it was virtually invisible. I mean, we're talking about dryer fog here. And so I walked over, and I kind of slowly put my hand into the space where it was, and I didn't feel anything, and I kept walking forward until I would guess about the time that I actually passed through the space. I mean, there was nothing there at all, and instantly I was struck by this sense of sorrow and despair so powerful that I collapsed on the floor, sobbing like a baby. I terrified my friend. Absolutely terrified him. I imagine at this point, because I was a little busy, that he was probably shaking in his boots there, but I fell onto the floor and started crying and crying and crying. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I kind of got to back up for just a moment and tell you, when I tell ghost stories like the Palatine or anything like that, that's history, that's, me, playing up a story. This was personal to me, so it's even a little embarrassing when you talk about lying on the floor of your bedroom crying. But the fact is that I knew it wasn't me. I wasn't upset about anything, and I felt like I was standing in a room with two big holes that are my eyes, looking out of those holes and not in control of what was happening. This was clearly not me. I was an observer. And after, a minute or two, I stopped crying, and the kind of almost clenching that I was feeling released. And as soon as I started to get up to say, what the heck just happened, it clumped right back down on me again, and again I started crying. This went maybe through 2 or 3 rounds, and finally, when it ended, the last time I was ready for it, because I knew it was coming back. It stopped, and I was waiting, and I'm not going to get up, because it's coming back any time now. And it didn't come back, but I heard Russell talking. And he said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. You've never let me grow up. You never, you wouldn't let go of me. And I guess I hadn't really forgotten what was going on, but now I had no idea what he was talking about. So I turned around, I looked at him, and I was like, what? And he said, I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but you never let me grow up. You never let me go. And he wasn't looking at me. And I suddenly understood, well, understood isn't the right word. This is all theory. What appears to me, all these years later and at that time, is that whatever was trying to communicate through me or trying to express itself through me found only this raw emotion. With Russell, it was actually able to verbalize. And whoever it was a woman. And I can only imagine that either she took her own life or died in sorrow for whatever reason. Whatever happened to her, I imagine that she died in that room, and I imagine that she did not die a happy woman, because there didn't seem to be anything left but this overwhelming feeling of despair. And at 16, I can tell you that changed my life. That experience changed me forever, and I probably wouldn't be standing here before you today.
Did it change your bedroom?
No, it did not change my bedroom. Although I will tell you that the epilogue to the story is that as soon as it was done, the two of us took a few moments to discuss it before the rational part set in, and we kind of realized it's like the first time you cut yourself. When you first cut yourself, you're just like, oh wow, and then you suddenly go, hey, that really hurts, but it takes it a minute to sink in. Well, this is exactly what happened. After we kind of had our brief little rational discussion, we suddenly went, oh, this is a really bad thing, and we left. We actually left the house. We went out a side door because my parents, I was 16. It's like now, 11 o'clock at night, they didn't want us roaming the streets. We roamed the streets for hours, afraid to go back to that house. We didn't go back until, I think, the 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, when the either we're going to get picked up by the cops or our parents are going to find out, and we're going to get grounded. And that kind of fear is usually more scary than a ghost to most kids. So eventually made it back to the house, and probably didn't sleep. I don't remember closing my eyes until dawn. But no, stayed living in the house remarkably, and it was a nerve-wracking experience for a while. But eventually, not only did I calm down about what happened, but there was never any feeling of malice. It never came back. I never experienced it again, and I can tell you, I'm not a sensitive. I'm not somebody who believes that I have any psychic powers or anything. I think that we were in the right place at the right moment.
Did you ever research the history of the house?
That is the most commonly asked question I get, and the only thing I can tell you is that I was a 16-year-old kid and I didn't do it. I wouldn't have known where to start. Really wouldn't have known where to start. And now, so many years later, I actually walk by that house. I live barely a mile from that house, and I walk by it from time to time, and there have been times that I've seen people sitting on the porch that I've just been tempted to walk up and talk to them and ask them, but how can you do that? That's the sort of thing that, unless the situation really opened itself up because you had a good excuse to, that you'd be the weirdo walking up on the porch and asking if their house was haunted. So